Hey guys, what's up? MadSeason here, back with another video for you. BlizzCon has officially concluded, and I'm catching up on videos here. In this one, I wanted to go over some classic news. We had a classic panel, an official blue post, and some information from the Q&A. I wanted to cover it in its entirety, and give you the footnotes, and just talk about it in general for a bit. Highlights are progressive content releases, details on changes or no changes, sharding, and more. The first thing I wanted to cover is just how they're creating Classic. Those who played the demo would know that they are using the modern code. They had data from 1.12, art from 1.12, and even the code. They liked everything but the latter because with it also come all of the old bugs, exploits, hacks, and so on. Things that people would surely exploit since it's 12 years old at this point. So instead of that old code, they decided to go with modern, and from there just sort of pick and choose what to correct and how to correct it. This would be stuff like spell training, spell ranks, weapon skills, debuff limits, and so on. They actually go into a lot more detail with this, but I just wanted to give you the footnotes here and get into the meat of it for you. All of this is to say, no, the game isn't going to be 100% 2006 Classic World of Warcraft. There will be very small differences here and there, but know that it isn't stopping them from trying to reach that 100%, or at least 99%, as I'll explain in a bit. They go on to say that that's their #1 primary goal. No dungeon finder, no flying, no achievements, and they even went into the debuff limit. This has been a point of contention because in the demo, there seems to be an unlimited amount of debuffs per target. In Classic 1.12, the limit was 16. It might not seem like a huge deal at first glance, but it actually had huge implications on the raiding scene and class balance as a whole. You had to sort of ration these debuff slots, so if you were an Affliction Warlock, you were kind of screwed since most of your damage was of course dots. Warriors weren't allowed to take deep wounds, and so on. You had to save those slots for more important stuff, like the Warrior's Sunder Armor, because that's how they generated threat. Warlocks had a resistance debuff that I think people wanted, and so on. Suffice to say, if you change the debuff limit, you would also have to rebalance all of the raids and bosses and whatnot, because they would of course become easier if people had free reign to do whatever they wanted to. Well, you don't have to worry about any of that, because they ended up confirming that they will indeed keep the limit at 16. I know I'm kind of harping on this topic for too long, but to me, this is actually the most important piece of information that we've gotten about Official Classic ever since its announcement back in BlizzCon 2017, because this tells me that even something from an outside perspective that may just seem like a straight up game flaw, to still recreate it just speaks tons of their design philosophy and dedication to true Classic. Like, pretend we're talking about a different game here. If you were given the information that because of something as arbitrary as a debuff limit, which was introduced due to server limitations and frankly questionable game design, it completely changes the meta and the dynamic of the entire endgame, everyone would ask, what the heck is the benefit of that? But that's how it was in Classic. To recreate that, I think speaks a lot of where their head is, and it's great news for anyone in the no changes crowd. But that's not the only bit of information we got. Another huge thing that I wanted to share is their content release plan. A lot of people have been speculating on how they're going to be releasing raids and whatnot. Will the game just launch with every single raid out, including Naxxramas, and everyone just rushes through and quote finishes the game in a month or two? Or will they release them over time to mimic the actual game as it was from 04 to 07? Well, they confirmed that they not only have a raid release schedule, but rather a content release schedule in general. That's right, Battlegrounds, dungeons, and even the old raid launch events. They did put a big emphasis on work in progress here, but here's what they're thinking right now. Stage 1 is the Molten Core and Onyxia, Dire Maul, Kha'Zix, and Azurgos. The Molten Core and Onyxia, as you know, were the release raids back in 04. Dire Maul was later patched in, so maybe put a pin in that. Personally, I think it'd be better in Stage 2, which is the Blackwing Lair, Battlegrounds, and PvP Rewards. This is also big because, as they mentioned, a lot of the PvP rewards sort of undermined the early raiding content. Specifically, they used the Unstoppable Force as a reference, which was a purple two-hander. If getting your first purple is as easy as queuing up for AV for a couple of days at level 60, where's the urgency to get into the Molten Core? So very big news there. I guess that it also sort of confirms a rank 14 grind maybe. I don't want to speak too much about that, but they did mention it briefly, and if it wasn't in the game, I feel like we would have heard about it by now. So make of that as you will. Stage 3 is Encourage, including the opening event, Tier 0.5 armor, which is the purple reskins of the Tier 0 dungeon armor, Silithus content, because remember Silithus was unfinished at launch, and the Dragons of Nightmare outdoor raid bosses. And lastly, for Stage 4, we have the final raid, Nexramus, complete with the Scourge invasion. So, forgive me for overusing this word, but again, this is huge right here. It's just their dedication to recreating that authentic experience. As far as I know, people were just asking for progressive raid releases, so to go above and beyond, and also including PvP rewards, battlegrounds, and outdoor raid bosses, was really cool news to hear. They also mentioned things such as add-on API. They said that the old system, with the right knowledge, allowed some add-ons that were really borderline botting. And at the same time, they're not entirely satisfied with their modern system because it would allow players to circumvent certain aspects of Classic. They did say that they are still working on it, and they're looking to find a middle ground where it's an authentic Classic experience, but at the same time, you can't basically bot your way to 60, nor automate your rotations or anything like that. And lastly, the other piece of news that I wanted to talk about is Sharding. As some of you know, it was found that Sharding is in the demo. Basically, for those who don't know, there are different instances of each zone. Even if you're on the same server, you won't necessarily see everyone. Say you're in Westfall 3, and the other person is in Westfall 14. You can only see them if you invite them to a group. Now, don't get this mixed up with cross-realm zoning, which is cross-server, which by the way was confirmed not to be in Classic. The major difference here being on separate servers of course, but also things like not being able to trade with each other, join guilds, and in general, just watering down the community and destroying that server identity. The community is one of the biggest, if not the biggest aspect of Classic World of Warcraft. Things like Cross-Realm, and to a lesser extent Sharding, serve as big hurdles in letting it grow and thrive. So, even though Sharding is less extreme as Cross-Realm, it is still an issue as you would imagine. Getting ganked in Stranglethorn? Just jump to someone else's shard. Or hey, Kha'Zix is up. But wait, I don't see him. Or even, well, we just killed Kha'Zix, so let's shard hop to see if he's up in another instance and just farm purples all day. You get the gist by now. They did address this in the panel and the Q&A. They said that, yes, sharding is in the demo, but it's mainly there because they knew that the turnout would be quite huge, so for the sake of server stability and allowing people to actually complete quests and whatnot, they felt the need to have it in the game so people get a good first impression of what they have cooked so far. They said this in a blue post as well, but they went on to say that they're considering maybe having it in the official Classic launch for the same reason. However, it's not something that they plan on keeping long term because they do understand just how much of a negative effect it has on the community.
The first few weeks, when everybody is packed into Valley of Trials, when everybody is packed into Elwyn, we think we can use sharding there in a limited, time-limited way to solve the initial launch day load problems, while making sure that in the long run, as server communities solidify, there's a healthy population and a single world for everyone to live in.
So, assuming that they hold true to this, then okay, maybe the starter zones for the first couple of weeks have sharding, and then once the population smooths out, they take it out. I think that most people will be fine with this. Personally, I'm sort of begrudgingly fine with it, to be honest. I understand where it's coming from, I do. Of course we want a nice launch experience. Of course we want the servers to be as stable as possible, but having this giant swarm of people at launch, I think, is a legitimate part of that launch experience. I mean, come on, how cool would it be to see Northshire or the Valley of Trials just swarming with people eager to relive the game that they fell in love with 14 years ago? I personally want to see that unadulterated. But that's just me. I can also see the flip side of things. I'm not sure. I'm not trying to sway anyone here. I'm just sharing my opinion. In fact, I want to get a general idea of everyone's thoughts on this. So in the description, I'll have a poll for you to vote on. So let's make it official. Are you with temporary sharding for stability and an easier launch? Or do you want that pure chaotic launch experience? But that's about it, I guess. Overall, I'm more excited as I've ever been. And yeah, go ahead and make your jokes about the monotone voice. I've heard them all. But seriously, I really am. The main takeaway here is their hearts do seem to be in the right place. The only changes they mentioned really were minor things, such as the mail system working correctly, like that old bug when you had mail but nothing was in your mailbox, or there would be a lag when trying to retrieve it or something. They're fixing that, which is good. They did also say that they're keeping the system of loot sharing, which is a bigger deal. Loot sharing is in that timer when you get something and you can trade it to someone who is in the same raid, as long as it was within 2 hours or you don't equip it. In the old days, you actually had to pay to GM, and it would take a few days to get that piece of gear to the right person if it was incorrectly master looted or whatever. So this skips that step, which I'm fine with personally. One thing that's still left in the air though is itemization. As you would imagine, many different items and craftables were added throughout the course of the game, and they'll have a big effect on balance. So far, we've had basically zero information on how they're handling that. My thoughts are, if they're doing progressive raid releases, this would also be something that they have to be aware of, and they're probably thinking about it. But we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. I gotta say though, overall, I was pleasantly surprised by a lot of what we heard from the panel. Now all that's left is the waiting game, which if you don't know, the release is the summer of 2019. Several months away, so hopefully we can get some constructive feedback going, and in these last 7 or so months, make the game as good as we remembered, back from 04 to 07. I hope you found the video helpful, like it if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Farewell for now, mortals. We hope you enjoyed today's video. See you again soon.